Continued proofreading of Temporal Cross Currents. Susie believed that if the Earthers included nature in all of their surface settlements early on instead of stupidly ignoring or attacking it, building more curves and variable grades, multi-level structures covered with natural vegetation, and the entire building policy integrated into harmony with natural tide and flowing course of the biosphere before the shocking displacements of traditional design, humanity might have maintained a semblance of balanced natural systems and population and avoided disasters, Hemingway effects in the 21st century, and incendiary global warming. My employers, she thought, are still against environmentalism because it brings new competitive technologies that can reduce dominant and tricky counterfeit populist methods. Mature business systems gain more and more devotees, become conservative and resist change outside of their product line, expanding with capital accumulation to a scale beyond rational environmental need. Corporate is the official party line of free enterprise is the only way to work, and not be branded as anti-business, metaphysical, political anarchist, or worse yet, mislabeled as racist or gendist, since true brothers and sisters support established corporate personnel value criteria. Susie's assignment on Mars had continued for a year and a half Earth days. In another 2.5 years, she would be free to return to Tethys, a new home beneath the sea. Make a correction here. She wanted to develop her invention into a business, but a patent cost a year's salary, and Copernicus system patent searches, 3 years of bureaucratic review, as if it was possible to keep the idea secret during the time it took to save the exorbitant fee. Capital-intense corporate patent departments were stuffed with prepaid patent applications and scouts scouring the universe for patentable ideas. Susie scratched her derriere, which occasionally overheated indoors when wearing a stealth jumpsuit, and tugged her panties to readjust mildly constrictive superconductive thermal weave. Corporate had given her the task of monitoring and infiltrating dissident organizations on Mars that could adversely impact corporate profits and political control. Susie also served as liaison and executive for coyotes and parties of illegal aliens arriving in need of help with necessaries for survival and job placement. The dynamics and the interrelationships of human economy, corporate power, and the tendency toward inertial category conservatism, population density, inventive micro and macro, economic subsystem independence, and conflicts of race, gender, and political systems versus individual liberty and planetary tactical situation were factors as much selected by the luck of the draw in space-time. Insert an E and take out the dash as choice. People followed existing lines as fullbacks might follow blockers ahead as they economically and intellectually grow in life, so far as they are able or willing to do so. Where the media organs of business always are retarded as to anathematize environmental efforts to regreen technology of the earth as anti-business or apt to sell for instant gain untruths that were deleterious to environmental health. In the long run, she wondered. Earth wars and individual-sponsored catastrophes were a product of unstable environmental use, which could have been avoided with more security of personal liberty and strength in building topographically replicant structures with retained biota systems that corporate wouldn't allow. Mars and the breakaway districts. A political insurrection was entirely Martian-formed with building projects under particle fields replete with topographic and biota features of central Texas and New Mexico. Novo, Miklagarth, and Topsky were unique corporate showcase landscapes that corporate had built that had no chance of being duplicated elsewhere by others because of high costs involved in displacing business cycles of inertial technical infrastructure. Comparative excellence in enviro-building design sent echoes throughout Copernicus system, sounding the obsolescence of rectilinear construction. Martians had to create ecosystems from initial conditions of lifelessness. The techniques were exfiltrated to the Earth for a pittance of payment to the designers. I left off a Y from Earth. Should be Yerth. Sounds better. I like the Earth rather than the Earth. Yerth. It's yours. You own it all. Yes. Too much of it. In reflecting upon issues that brought her to Mars, Susie sublimely shaped up a plan for the day. Midsummer sun flooding her home in the Valley of the Shepherds, vacation charged the quasi-crystal dome to full power. She noted that the self-governing building crystals had increased the mass of the dome. Corporate boss Frank Studhouse had given her insight into distal issues that were acting upon the probability concentration of organizations to adversely affect corporate interests. Issues such as gender breakup that preceded the final chaos of the earth had arisen without real contemporary understanding of the direction and power of emerging social forces. She must be aware of influences upon main organizational drifts that were distal, peripheral, and yet part of the one calculation, such as the mass and ownership of the Oort cloud. I don't know why I capitalized that use of the word one right there. Susie and Frank spent a weekend Earthside talking about some of the peripheral forces which had brought the United States of America to fly apart like a bowl of jello in a centrifuge breaking at high speed. Like a centrifuge at high speed. It already flew apart. Breaking it would be redundant, so I'll take that out. A centrifuge at high speed during world catastrophe in the 21st century. She dismissed Studhaus's contention that reduction of white males in American social status and egalitarian reshuffling of the workforce caused the end of Western civilization. That American males of European ancestry had been the core inertially guiding Western civilization was purely chauvinist and preposterous. She thought white male dominance had been entirely coincidental and unnecessary for technological progress, characteristic of the culture. At any rate, corporate had eventually promoted workers of other races and gender for less pay initially, and everything seemed fine. It was inevitable that women would receive full economic equality because they were a supply of comparatively cheaper labor. Market forces demanded it, and women strove for the freedom to labor all their lives. Women had liberated themselves through twin miracles of Western civilization, medicine and technology, from a second-rate role to men in America, then Europe, and the rest of the earth. In America, comma, Europe, and the rest of the earth. The time since before the beginning of Homo sapiens more than 1.5 million years ago, when males and females were inextricably bound together for procreative purposes, had come to an end. Women achieved reproductive freedom and could select insemination from a plethora of human, robotic, or laboratory means such as turkey basters with designer genes for quality progeny and relationships of whatever duration they had freedom to choose. Eggs could be sold for a half a year's wage to medical researchers in fertility and recombinant genetic splicing clinics. Fatherhood could be ordered from banks of high-caliber sperm with Nobel Prize-winning quality synthetically, and in some instances actually after receipt of prize certificate. Winning quality after receipt of a prize certificate. Musicians and sports stars tended to win more Nobel Prizes after the farms were created. Donors with suitable genetic enhanced traits from mass-produced donor accounts of SysWeb are entirely wholly artificially computer designed and assembled molecule by molecule from patented sperm, a monopolistic Passion Limited member of the Copernic System Stock Exchange. Abortion and contraception had long ago eliminated unplanned pregnancies of any source. Males had no role as providers or defenders of the weaker female in monogamous relationships from the traditional dangers of violence or sex with rival males. Susie and Studhaus considered how total female independence and reduction of monogamy for survival or sex for pleasure had altered the structure and ergonomics of society. She thought that if total anarchistic war plague and the end of civilization had not brought the earth to chaos, the earth. The chaos, many worthwhile new opportunities would have developed. If she was successful in rooting out the Martian rebels, then corporate might have a chance to accomplish here what had been brought to an untimely halt in lemming chaos of the earth. Susie turned away from the dome's panoramic view and slid into a slit aperture in the underground transit mall. She fell into the air cushion and reached to tile the rococo piazza of the Gort planetary subway system, walked up to a pastry vendor, bought a cheesecake strudel, and gave a wrist implant cash card to a pass in the barcode field. Most Martians had a barcode for ubiquitous mouse security stat identification. Most toll collectors were simple pass fields. They get on ride-through shuttle had everyone's ID except for those with an adequate masking device. Virtually everyone anywhere had a proton witness implanted somewhere for legal safety. The art of dissimulation perfected in the 20th century necessitated lifelong neutral witness mounts defensive countermeasures in a legal environment that was often verbally manipulated by clever criminals as a tool to harm the innocent. She stepped into Gort, her mind still probing for clues to ferret out and dissolve rebel organizations. She wondered if the real cause for the lemming chaos, ad hoc population decline phenomenon, wasn't the failure of the industrialized and post-industrialized West to switch over from flush toilets to a dry water saving microwave sewage systems system to dry water. That's what verb quantity agreement disagreement. Anyway, capable of deleting excreta and billions of gallons of bodily fluids from the planetary hydrologic cycle. Water should have been used for agriculture anyway, she thought. A rush of early lunch commuters piled onto the overcrowded Martian subway. In a cluster of strangers packed closer than starving people in a breadline. A tall, bony stranger with an unusual alloyed leg, a royal corporate Highlander kilt, juggish Philly designer tunic, and ochre-brown submersion, suntan on an emotionless leather-faced, moved body to body contact with her. His orange and purple eyes and narrowed eyelids hidden behind mirrored glasses looked unblinkingly upon her as the crowd piled up against them. She was en route to the corporate quarter of Novo Micklegarth on the P-Lund line, which ran through the valleys and islands to Des Austin, Planotown, Biggsburg, Banning, Bottville, Macaroon, and Novo El. A shining city on a plain built like a dream, southwest of Olympus Mons 20 years ago, when the only thing to fear was fear itself, the earth chaos. The earth chaos. Corporate, big commune, aliens, freezing, fragging from human organizations, transmission resonance to disintegration, mass resonance from interplan chaotics to reduced quarks, any objects with mass, and complete hostile takeover of one's mind by media or government programming technique. Novo Micklegarth must have been delivered by C-section from committee architects, but didn't turn out too bad, Susie thought, although not the perfect corporate rule, commercial. Her suite of offices was a walk up on the lush Kant streets. A reflecting canal full of colorful engineered fish and covered with the same living crystals stronger than steel abomination, comprising a quasi-crystal dome piled up as a large industrial diamond in a growth spurt. Corporate quarter was one of 37 stylized quarters in the city. A media quarter anachronistically persisted from the high watermark era of media socialist intifada. The Old Town Settlers Quarter and UT Extraneous Quarter merged into the Independent Sales and Market Research Park along Kant Street. Pioneers, settlers, had included yuppies from Greenland whom applied a measure of Inuit spaciousness to the quarter, wishing not to be Dresdenized by some future Guy Fawkes. Gort took 7 minutes, being a milk run, reaching out to every slumped porch dome cluster on the way. For the alien pressing close up against Susie, it might as well have been 15,000 years. Within the alien, time did not exist as a general parameter, nor, strictly speaking, did space. His mind was an element of his body was an element for his mind, and his mind was transcendent through his body. The consciousness, spatially and temporally, retained present total awareness of every place it had ever been and everything it had experienced. The present moment, with Susie on the tube, was a small window, a minute sense experience in the vast structure of accumulating experience. Within the unlimited vistas of consciousness, adding more and more sense data, the alien would continuously explore assembled and reassembled time-space continuum. The same Martian deserts and cities, people and places were experienced as an aggregate accumulation in all seasons of being the alien had journeyed. For 17 Martian years, the alien had probed the developing Mars colony and Broder system during Pax corporate hegemony. He passed unhindered through the sun. Alien technology, hundreds of years past, mastered the final frontier of particle wave physics and began to utilize the principles of field tensors to access the most intense gravitational fields available for spin tensors across adjacent areas of low spatial intensity. Heat was another displaceable factor. Within the alien technology, the millions of degrees of heat in stars was part of another system beyond the skin surface field they wore. Microdimensions bent the undesirable elements of four-dimensional space-time out of the way. The fifth dimension permitted the alignment of time's attachment to it to be altered temporarily, permitting quick space travel. Black hole event horizons were non-events, temporally and spatially, except as the aliens chose. I think there's one O in chose. Chose to engage elements of the field as they passed within. Penultimate waves of quanta are cylindrical monads of apparent being. At an infinitely reducible stage, being itself has no self-standing reality, but is transcended by a non-contingent being permitting the reality of appearance. Gottfried Leibniz, second peer of Sir Isaac Newton, as co-inventor of the differential and integral calculus, had been close to the mark in postulating infinitely small window-like bubbles that he called monads, the essential building blocks of existence. In the wave particle spin level below even the level of quarks and waves, the substance of reality becomes non-attributable and an idea in motion for itself. A verbal criterion of language is itself relative and borrows an existence and foundation as a self-defining tautology. This sets and groups of ideas and structures, parameters and forms that constitute much of language. Its propositions and definitions are self-standing and entirely relational without an absolute source. Reality itself, or what physicists and astronomers have studied of it, and philosophers have considered in language about it, entirely relational without probability of having an ultimate ground or source except in faith. Another sentence fragment. About it entirely. Is entirely. I left the is out. Is entirely relational. The non-local phenomenon and uncertainty principle were clues to the insubstantial basis of substance for alien scientists hundreds of years ago in their own space-time locality. In time, aliens learned to adjust to the idea of displaced space-time fields and movement through space outside time-space of the usual universe. 1. I'm not going to go on too much more in this proofreading. A little bit, another paragraph or two, and that'll be about it. Standard broadcast frequencies of Earth culture for 2 centuries were a lighthouse beacon, or a little more. That drawing notice of numerous alien cultures observed. Standard broadcast frequencies of Earth culture for 2 centuries were a lighthouse beacon that drew notice. Drew capital letters. No, drew capital lot. Notice that drew notice of numerous alien cultures observing through quantum space-time lenses. Or space-time lenses. When the government of the world of the alien on corporate's drone employee 2135 finally approved galactic exploration of Copernicus system, Mars and the Earth were chosen for study first. And